residency like in August, and I was doing the show October 20th. It was my first day of rehearsal. Really being introduced to things. In 1997 for folks, you know? So the first half decade of my life, I was playing a drag queen, which is fascinating because of everything that's going on in the world and how drag queens are suddenly a target.
Yeah, like you were ahead of your time with all
It's
these.
wild. I mean, to think about it then when, you know, people were in love with the show. And, I remember folks from all political persuasions just being impassioned by the story. So many universal themes in Rent. And I don't remember a lot of pushback. However, I do remember a level of fear and safety concerns with, going out in drag, especially in New York. You would think it's a safe, not in every space is safe. And so I do know there was a shift, and drag certainly wasn't celebrated. A lot of my drag performers at the time, would do it as a side thing and had a real career, or a career that made them more money, I should say. It was before Drag Race. And now drag has become so mainstream that, of course, it's become an easy target.
Yeah. When you got the job on Queer Eye after that, like, did you know? Look, no one knew what really Bravo was at the time.
For context, Bravo had Inside the Actors Studio as their tentpole show, which was James Lipton interviewing famous actors in front of a class. And so when I was doing Xana Don't, and if you don't know anything about salaries on Broadway, you make a decent salary on Broadway, but off you do not. I think I was making $400 a week, maybe $398 a week doing Xana Don't. I took 6 months off of Rent to go do this show, and then my intention was to go back to Rent. And in the process, I'm auditioning for other things, TV things, hoping I can supplement that $400 a week in New York City paycheck. I moved out of my nice apartment, moved in with friends who had a guest room. I'd open the door and hit the bed. That's how small it was. And I got an audition for Queer Eye. I sat across from a woman like this, and she asked me to take her on a romantic date as a divorced dad living on Long Island. What would be our New York City date? And I knew the city like the back of my hand, so I gave her this flowery description of all the unique things we do, and she loved that. And she said, "How old are you?" And I said, 23. And she said, "You're 27. Where'd you go to school?" I was like, "I didn't graduate. I went right into Rent." She said, "You graduated. Give NBC Bravo the same answers tomorrow." I went in. There was 3 chairs, a brightly dressed blonde guy, a gay Buddy Holly, and an empty seat. I sat in that one. The board would ask me a question, and these 2 knuckleheads kept trying to discredit everything I said. I did not know my purpose being there was a chemistry test with 2 existing cast members, Carson and Ted. No one told me that. So I left like these guys were upstaging me. They were like like there was no like. So in the middle of the audition, once I felt that, I was like, I'm just going to be comedic and funny and quick-witted, so NBC will consider me for a sitcom in the future. That was my logic. Called my agent practically in tears, said, "Don't ever send me for anything like that ever again." I was humiliated. An hour later, he calls back and says, "Guess you didn't do that bad. You start Monday."
Wow.
And that was it. Like, there was no crazy. And then I remember, the first couple episodes, struggling to find my way. I can look at a picture at someone and tell you, how I can improve their hair, their wardrobe, their interior. That's easy. But how do you amplify someone's culture, and what does that term mean on a broad level, especially with network notes? Like, Jay needs to physically give them something. It has like there was all these stipulations that people didn't know about. And the year was 2003. Yeah. We do the 10 episodes. The last day, we're like, "Nice to meet you. Yeah, stay in touch." We didn't know it was going to be a hit. We didn't think season 2. We were like, "Nice to meet you." The food guy didn't even live in New York. Like, he was going back to Chicago. I was like, "Nice to meet you. Let me know when you're in New York again,"
Did you push back on like Carson and Ted like during the
I
like,
sure did,
guys,
because
like,
I was
off?
I will be damned if my big opportunity in front of network executives is diminished by these 2 loudmouths. But I love that. Instinctually, I made that choice to be quick-witted back because they started laughing, which showed I can play ball with just about anyone. And I think one of the keys to my longevity, it's almost 26 years in the industry, 25 and a half years, is that I can be a bit of a chameleon and find chemistry or find what you're giving. I can find what to supplement that to make the yin yang work, which is why I've had great scene partners like Lily Tomlin and Reba and people that, are all across the spectrum in terms of what they give. I can find what you need to make the scene work. And I'm thankful for that, but it's really it's honestly just listening and listening and responding to what you're being given, not saying, I'm coming in with an agenda and I'm going to do it. No. Gotta listen and respond to what you're given.
Well, this is why you were chosen as the culture vulture and Queer Eye.
Can I tell you though, with a new Queer Eye and stuff, I remember when I got the call that was coming, and it was from the producer's speakerphone. And if you know anything about a speakerphone situation where it's a conference call and there's multiple voices, that's usually good news. That's usually we're offering you something. So when they said we're bringing Queer Eye back, I did not let them take a beat. I jumped right in with my Puerto Rican ass and was like, oh my God, this is so amazing because now in my 30s, I have so much more to offer, blah, blah, blah. Because I wanted the moment to somewhat redeem myself from being an early 20-something playing on camera with my colleagues who were a decade older, who had a decade more life experience. And we had fallen into archetypes. I was the younger brother, which meant people could elbow in front of me. They could talk over me. Producers maybe didn't take me that seriously, who are story producers. I think they were struggling to figure out what to do with me. And it wasn't until later seasons that I really found my voice, because I was like, oh, hell no. You know what I mean? Not that they were doing it maliciously, but the energy. I was younger and I was also very easy to work with, which means if you asked me to do something and I didn't want to do it, I would make it work. I thought I should just play ball. I didn't know I could say, I'm not comfortable with that. That also comes to like fashion and stuff. If I saw a garment on the rack of wardrobe, I came from theater. You don't question the costume designer. They're designing a costume for the character. I didn't know or think about the clothes I wear on a reality show, because reality was new, would tell the audience who I am and and elements about my personality. I had no idea. So oftentimes for big things like the cover of Entertainment Weekly, I mean, Carson dressed me. He was dressing us at that time. And it was like, I hated it, and I didn't like it, but I didn't have enough confidence at that time or a strong enough sense of self to say, is there something else? I was also not sample size. The guys were wearing things from like, samples from designers, and they often would have to shop for me at like H&M or Century 21, or sometimes find something that was kind of androgynous from the women's collection because I could fit into that. I was like a size 28 waist or whatever I was when I was 23. And finding your voice and learning to take up space was one of the biggest lessons that Carson taught me. Because people look at the show and think, oh, he's a loudmouth, or he's like, Brett. No, he's the kindest, sweetest man who lived in a world that oppressed his voice for so long that he confidently said, you're going to accept me and I'm going to take up space whether you like it or not. And I witnessed him do that. And the audience only saw the positive. I saw behind the scenes pushback, the kind of bias that people would show. And he never backed down from it. He sort of almost forced people to see him. And